Awesome. It does show us live on both our YouTube and our Facebook page. So I'll just double check that we are in fact live before getting us started. Facebook page. So Facebook page. Great. Almost done. Great. Well, we're about to get started and get kicked off. So for those of you that are starting to tune in, which I already see a couple of people that are hopping on, please do let us know who is watching with us. You can go ahead and give us any comments, thumbs up, so I know who's tuned in. I do see Tara already, so good morning to you, Tara. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I usually like to wait a couple of minutes, especially on Facebook, so that way you can get notified and alerted that we're live and drop everything else because this broadcast is so much more important. Okay, so I'll get us started and kicked off. I'm Juliette Abdel, President and CEO of the Westminster Chamber of Commerce, and happy Tuesday to you. So glad to come back on another live broadcast. If this is your first time watching our videos, you can find many of the videos here on our Facebook page. They're also located on our YouTube channel, Westminster Chamber of Commerce, where you can find them dating back into March of 2020. So nearly a year, believe it or not. Now, these videos are incredibly resourceful. Not only do we share with you information on important topics, hot button issues that we've heard about, we also let you know about different programs and services that are out there and some of the newsworthy information that we want you to be aware of. So make sure that you hit the like button, you hit the follow so you can get those alerts when we do go live. And of course, if you are a returning viewer, thank you so much for tuning into our broadcasts in the past. Please be sure that you hit the share so that others in your network are also just as familiar as you are about the resources and services that are available. If you guys can do me a favor, because I'm hearing a little bit of a crinkling sound on my end, if you can hear me fine, let me know that you can hear me. You could just type in and say sound is fine. If you hear that crinkle like there's chips, which I haven't touched in a year and a half, let me know it sounds like chips so I can figure it out and fix that in the future. I also see Larry Godwin on here with us on the broadcast. Good morning to you, Larry and Travis. Thank you guys for hopping onto the broadcast this morning. So today's topic is one that's interesting. As most of you have heard over the last couple of weeks when we've had the mayor on here with us, we have downsized a few different things, including the test sites, the one that was at the MAC that's closed, the one that's over there at Front Range Community College that was just specifically for those city businesses and their employees. That one has also closed. We did have some great news yesterday come out that CDPHE has approved for the Jeffco site that's over there at it would be Fat Cats here in Westminster on the Promenade. The details of that testing site we will let you know of once they fully come to fruition. And of course, the Waterworld location is still there. That being said, there are numerous other testing sites all over the state that we want you to be aware of, especially if you're tuning into the broadcast outside of Westminster. We want you to familiarize yourselves with them. We also want to answer some of those common questions about the different types of tests that are there. I know we've heard some that are drive-through tests. We've heard, the common up the nose ones. We've even heard the saliva and others. And so what's the difference between them? Is there a difference at all in the timeliness? And then, of course, we had some different discussions around vaccines. So if you're interested in some of the more in-depth on vaccines from a provider's perspective, we had one of our medical physicians on here before to highlight that. You can find that broadcast in the video section. But I do have with me Courtney Steele. Courtney is with COVID Check Colorado, and she is in their external divisions, one of their leads that's there. And so I just want her to share a little bit about their organization, talk to us through the testing process, maybe even the vaccines. And then we want it to be engaging. So if you are viewing, I want you to familiarize yourself with the features on this video. At the bottom, you should find access to being able to post any comments or questions. You can already see a link that we've dropped in. This is a link where a lot of the COVID resources that we're aware of has been included on the chamber page. So if you type something in, we'll be able to pull it up onto the screen, whether it's comments, compliments, or questions that you have for Courtney. Please be sure that you drop them in here for us. And with that, Courtney, I promised you that I would condense it to a 5-minute opening statement, and I think I've done that. I will mute myself, so the floor is yours to take away.
Wonderful. Juliet, thank you so much for having me. Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Courtney Steele. I'm the Director of External Partnerships at COVID Check Colorado. I'm also a Westminster native, born and raised, grew up in Westminster, still live in Westminster today. So super excited to be with you all. Giving you a little bit of an overview of what we're going to cover today. I want to give you background on who COVID Check Colorado is, what we provide to the community, as well as starting to talk through some of those specific questions around types of tests. What should I be doing for my business? Who should be testing? How often should someone be testing? And what does the forecast look like for vaccination as well? As Juliet mentioned, please feel free to throw in questions, ask as many things as possible. This can be a very overwhelming topic. It still is for me sometimes, quite honestly. And so I want to make sure that you're getting the best information that you have. So a little bit about us. COVID Check Colorado is a social benefit enterprise within Gary Community Investments. Gary Community Investments, the Piton Foundation, have been around in Denver since the 70s with a hyper focus on long-term access to opportunity for low-income families. So when the pandemic struck, we took a step back and said, how do we best step into this? And for us, the priority was, how do we get kids safely back in school so their families can get back to work, so everyone can have some sort of sense of stability during this crazy time. And so what we developed is a, soup to nuts testing program that allows for free, easy, super convenient testing that also reports back to an employer, so that the employer has the data they need to make good decisions for their school, for their restaurant, for their business, for their manufacturing facility, whatever that is. So let me walk through a little bit of the process. So we have a fantastic partnership with CDPHE that is covering all of the cost of testing through March 31st of this year. We started with them in November and have been able to provide free access to testing in our communities, which has been amazing. And so we have testing locations in the Denver metro area, as well as partners all across the state to really increase and provide this access to testing. So we're going to say that you're a restaurant in the city, just to give you a sense. You can sign on as a partner with COVID Check Colorado. That allows you to have a very specific registration link for your employees to use. They can schedule their test. We'll go through what happens on the testing site and that process in a minute. They do their test, and you are notified, as well as the individual, of their test results. So if you're doing a baseline of employees coming back, if you're an office that's just reopening, if you're going to do ongoing screening, or also if it's a reactive process that someone is experiencing symptoms, you think there may have been exposure, this is also an opportunity to be able to leverage our infrastructure. We are also open to just the general community. And so there is a specific link. We'll make sure we pop it into the comments later on, that any community member can just access, schedule an appointment for a test, go to the test site, and get their test results. When we're talking about test results, we're talking about, we have about an average of 36-hour turnaround time, guaranteed within 72, about 36-hour turnaround time on test results. So let's go into what happens at a test site. What are we talking about when we're talking about testing? So COVID Check Colorado offers up PCR diagnostic testing. And so, there's antigen testing, there's antibodies testing, there's rapid testing, there's PCR testing. What we are offering is PCR testing. So PCR tests are the gold standard across the board with tests. What they are doing is they are detecting active virus in your system at the time of your test. So it's not telling you if you've had COVID in June of last year. It's telling you if in your system currently, if you are a carrier and if the virus is developing. So what we do is we do the mid-terminate nasal swab. So not the one that is like a brain tickle that goes all the way up to your brain. It's a shorter swab, goes about an inch in the nose, about 5 to 10 seconds in each nostril, and that is your process. So testing through us, Courtney, can schedule an appointment ahead of time. I'm able to pick the testing location and time that's most convenient for me. We'll talk about the opportunities that are available in Westminster specifically right now. And then I go to the test site. At our busiest peak times, we have waits of under 15 minutes. And that's when we are seeing, 10,000 tests across the metro area in a day. And so you are really going to have like a 5-minute in and out experience. You drive up to the test site. One of our greeters will confirm your identity. So name, date of birth. They'll get you checked in. You'll move on to the next station. Someone decked out in their full PPE gear will come with their nasal swab for you, do your swabbing, and then you drive off and you're taken care of. You will get a text message or email notification when your results are available. You log into our HIPAA compliant portal and sign in, and then you'll get your test results. The other option that we do have at select test locations is a saliva-based test. And so, Juliet, you were talking about what are all these different tests. So the saliva-based test that we use is Saliva Direct. That was developed out of Yale. It's the test that the NBA used to create their bubble. It is a diagnostic PCR test as well. So that is an option that we are currently using in schools. So with major school districts of being able to test students and staff to get them safely back into buildings and back into school. And then we are on a weekly basis offering saliva at our other testing locations as well. And so you can always check out our website, covidcheckcolorado.org, our social media for more information about new sites that are opening. We're opening new sites weekly. We're growing rapidly as the need continues to grow, as well as it will let you know what locations have saliva direct testing that week. So you can stay on top of it if you do have a preference for saliva. Saliva results are 24 to 48 hours, so a little bit of a shorter window, guaranteed time there. As for resources in Westminster, so we operate Monday through Friday out of Mountain Range High School off Huron. We have a very big location there. Adams 12 has been very gracious to host us and let us be set up there since August. So you can find us there. And then starting next Tuesday, so the 19th, we will also be running from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Westminster High, Monday through Friday. So 2 locations covering different parts of the geography of Westminster. We would love to have folks there. I think another conversation that let's have, and then let's jump into questions if there are any, is what should I be doing for my business? So I started out at COVIDcheck working on our private sector partnerships and really how do we walk businesses through. And so there are a couple different ways that I've seen businesses implement a testing program. So one is what I mentioned from a baseline perspective. So we are going back into work. We've all been remote for an extended period of time, but we want to make sure that when we open up the building, that we know that we're not just bringing COVID right through the doors. And so encouraging all of your employees to test ahead of coming into the building is one way to implement. 2, as I mentioned, we are here in the event of an exposure, in the event that you have an employee or an individual who might be experiencing some symptoms and you would like to make sure that they get tested and they are free of COVID before they come back in. And then the third way is an ongoing testing program. And so we have seen some businesses that are asking employees to test every 2 weeks has been our recommendation. So we can do asymptomatic testing as well, or not experiencing any symptoms, not any known exposure. And so with that, you would encourage your employees to test every 2 weeks. You have access to a dashboard to be able to see those results, monitor, track, and make sure that folks are in fact testing along the way. So those are the 3 ways that I've seen this program implemented in different ways. Also happy, of course, to talk about what schools are doing or anything else in the community that is of interest to you all. But really appreciate you having me. I want to make sure that I'm giving you helpful information at the end of the day.
No, this is terrific. Thank you so much, Courtney. And I see Parker Brown on here with us and Tracy. Thank you guys for hopping on to this broadcast. We have with us Courtney Steele. She is with COVIDcheck Colorado. And wow, at the work that they are doing. I had no idea. And I feel like I should have connected with you almost a year ago, honestly. So they have a wealth of different programs that they're offering, not just to our private sector, but even community members at large. And I have done my best to try and type into the comment section a lot of those resources for everyone. I don't see any questions, Courtney, but I have some questions that popped in my head as you were going over this. So if you're okay with it, I'll just kind of go back through on here. Now I've shown the website, and I've also included it into the comment section. That's covidcheckcolorado.org, where there's more information about the testing sites and about how these programs are being run and where to find them. And Courtney, you went in a little bit of detail about, and thank you for humoring me with the saliva versus the up the nose type of test, because I hear like that's a concern, right? And people have that as like the very first few tests were way up. I mean, I know people that just left from there and it was like, this was intense. And these are tough people, right? But that's not the case anymore. It's like the 5 to 10 seconds. And I know I've done those tests before. So it's not, outside of being minimally uncomfortable, it's nothing that you walk away from and you're like, oh my gosh, there were my brain cells with it. That being said, the saliva test, that's open and available for anybody to do. It's not necessarily restricted to specific age or specific sector. Is that right?
Yeah, Juliet, that's a great question. That's correct. It's open for anyone. I will say that when you start to get under 5 or 6 years old, it gets a little bit more difficult. The biggest piece of the saliva test that can throw folks off, there is a 30-minute fast ahead of the test. So no food or drink, tobacco, gum, anything ahead of time. So there is a little bit of planning that has to go into it. And then quite honestly, some folks are really able to drool into the test tube very easily, and some have a harder time. I personally have a tough time with it. And what we're really looking for is clear saliva. So you want to be able to have, about 0.5 milliliter of clear saliva that doesn't have bubbles in it, isn't goopy, for lack of a better term. And so some folks have a really easy time with that, and some folks really struggle, like I do, with being able to produce that saliva. Our teams on location, though, are great at being able to coach you through. They'll come over and talk about your favorite foods with you. They'll give you the tip of brushing your teeth with your tongue, and that will help enact and like really get your saliva glands producing more saliva. But there is no restriction on it. So it's open to community members, open to businesses, open to pretty much any age. My cousin's son, so my nephew, second cousin, whatever we want to call that, is 6 years old, and he was like, oh yeah, I got this, I can take care of it, and happily spit into the tube, and we went well on his way. So it was a fast and easy process. And as I mentioned, on our website, it will list the select sites that do have saliva. We have a smaller volume capacity that we are offering at the moment with Saliva Direct. And so you can always check our website and get more information.
Yeah, that's so great. And thank you so much for going in detail, because I was thinking it was just, they put something underneath your tongue and that's how they would get it. And so it does make a difference to know mentally what you're going into, and the 30-minute fast. So you don't really think about that. And then you just throw in a mint and it's like that's already affected it already. We have Deandra and Christina. Thank you both for hopping on here. In fact, they asked a question that I was about to get around to. So that was perfect. We mentioned earlier on, so Christina is saying that the nasal swab is brutal. And I think I'm going to guess that it was early on, Christina, that you had this done. It might not be. It might be, you're not like me and you're not comfortable with it up there. It is a little bit for that 5 to 10 seconds for sure. So Christina's question relates to testing, and I know she came on a little bit later in the broadcast, so she's asking if there are any free testing sites still available. We kicked off the broadcast by referencing a couple that we have emphasized repeatedly here in our community. We had 4, we were down to about 2 at Waterworld, and then the soon to come up and coming over at Fat Cats. But you shared with us some information about 2 at individual schools that I was completely unaware of. So those tests, to your knowledge, will continue to be free through that March period. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, Christina. Thank you for asking that. So we have a partnership that we really value with CDPHE, and CDPHE graciously is covering the cost of all tests through March 31st, 2021 through our program. We partnered with them in November. We're able to offer free testing through the holiday season and are so thrilled to be able to continue to offer that for our partners moving forward. And so with that is entirely free. So that's no out-of-pocket copay, that's no insurance bill, just completely free access to testing.
is so great. And Courtney, do you see that there is an issue with people feeling comfortable going to schools? Or schools, do they have any additional security points and measure as opposed to, some of these testing sites we're driving up to, we're going into, it's a little bit different than going to an on-school campus. And we mentioned Westminster High School. You also mentioned Mountain View, and both of those are amazingly spread out in our community, which is, I think, really great to know, because when you factor in Waterworld, factor in Westminster High School, and then you put in Mountain View, we are touching all corners of Westminster. That being said, are they running into a little bit different kind of security systems in place because it is school and it is during the operating hours?
Yeah, absolutely, Juliet. That's a great question. So Westminster High and Mountain Range have been wonderful partners of ours and let us take over their parking lot to set up our high throughput drive-through locations. And so we are on a part of campus where we are contained within ourselves. We work with the school team, school staff, school security to make sure that we aren't creating more traffic or more harm than good, and that we are also staying separate from the students and from the general population. And so at Mountain Range, for example, our team does not have access to the building. We stay outside of the building. We are separated from the student parking lot. And so, of course, student safety and school safety in general, from a peer safety standpoint, and also from the spread of the virus, are of the utmost importance for us. They have also been wonderful partners, all of our education partners, in planning how do we continue to offer testing, eventually transitioning into vaccine distribution, and how do we get everyone safely back in school. And so it's been a wonderful, beautiful partnership of moving all these parts and pieces together in unison so that we're really supporting our communities in the best way possible. So we're super excited to be getting students back in classrooms. Elementary students are the first round that are going. If any of you have kiddos in Adams 12 or any of the major districts, Westminster, even DPS, APS, we are working on testing programs with them to make sure that we're getting everyone safely back into school.
Yeah, and I love that security measure, especially around the kiddos. And that's what you started with, that you guys were really trying to support those kids getting back to school and making sure that they were taken care of. And I love that you've been able to join not only the schools and taking care of them, but the overall community and the business community in that regard. So I think that's terrific, and really great to hear about the security feature. I actually posed that because I had that question way back, and there was kind of concern from a parent that they had heard there was testing going on at the school. And so they were thinking, that here you're bringing all these infected people or possibly asymptomatic people around their kids, and then they would be bringing it back. And it sounds like you already have that thought in mind, and you separated it enough that that's not going to be a problem in the long run. I see Tina Silver. Good morning to you, Tina. Thank you for hopping on to the broadcast with us. We have Courtney, and I have done my best to summarize everything that Courtney has shared into the comment section. It's a lot of information, so I ask you guys to really go back and look over it because she's gone into so much detail. Courtney, this is the feature that you guys have that I was not aware of, even with the location that we had that was supporting businesses. Yours seems so much more holistic. And so this idea of, if I'm an employer, I can set up a dashboard essentially and create this whole system for my workforce. I think that's amazing that you have this. Not only can they have new employees go through this, they can have returning people to their workforce. They can set up periodic tests, so kind of like drug tests, only it's almost like a COVID test and much more, needed right now on a day-to-day basis, right? So I love that. And so I would ask, and I don't know if you have this right offhand, but how many employers do you think, is there a good percentage of employers that may not be aware that this is out there and are using it? Because I know for one, and I'm not saying that just because I don't know, everybody else doesn't know, but generally if I don't know, a good percentage of people don't. And so I wonder if there's so many that haven't put a system in place like this and seen the value behind that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we work directly we're nearing 200 partners across the state to help them implement their testing programs. And you can imagine when you start to look at 200 entities versus the world of entities, that's a smaller percentage. And so our hope and our goal is to just continue to share information, be a valuable resource, and help folks implement more. We have seen great uptick in the restaurant industry, in office buildings, in manufacturing, and we have wonderful partners across those different sectors and are always looking to grow. We've also implemented great first responder programs with different fire departments, police departments around the city and around the state as well. And so we're always looking to grow that base. I think that this is still something that's so new. And, we're still figuring it out, even though it's a year later, we're still figuring out what is that right mix of things. And also as we change and we go from level red to orange to maybe yellow and back and forth, those things change and there's a lot to navigate. And so we are here as a resource to also try and help you navigate that and figure out what does that mean. I will also touch on vaccination because vaccine is obviously the hot topic of the moment. And I always like to first ground us in that just because you have vaccine and you've received that shot in the arm or someone around you has, doesn't mean that COVID just immediately goes away. And so testing and this testing protocol is still going to be a really important piece of the equation until we can reach that herd immunity and really get our folks vaccinated. So from a vaccine standpoint, COVID Check Colorado is excited and ready and in the process of stepping into that as well. Our approach at the moment has been to partner with providers who actually have doses or are receiving doses, and we can help fill the gap in that last mile of how do you actually get that dose to a patient. Because we're seeing right now, it's not necessarily the supply side that we're having trouble with. It's how do we get that supply to patients, because there's the thawing process, there's the actual just workforce of who is able to administer and physically put that shot in an arm. There are all of these different considerations. And so we are in the process of partnering with providers, providing them with our infrastructure, and then also helping scale up, because we know that right now providers are getting 300, 400 doses to be able to take care of folks in phase 1A. But when we start to move into 1B and further from there, being able to do 300 doses in a week is not going to be a quick enough scale opportunity for us. And so we are super excited to be exploring partnerships. If you all have providers that you're aware of that are looking for some of this infrastructure, we are here for that as well. So we're really excited to keep moving forward. Also, obviously, educators have been moved into that phase 1B time frame and a priority on the 70 plus population. And so for us, the faster that we can get through the healthcare workers and get through 70 plus, the quicker we can get to those essential services and a lot of the businesses that we're talking to here. And so that's how we are also stepping into this, is to really ramp up that. And then obviously the vaccine conversation changes daily as well, of how many doses, where they're going to be released, who's going to be releasing them. So you can also always check our website, our social media for the latest information on vaccine distribution as well. But we are super excited to be stepping into that space and figuring out the right way that we can play in that as well.
Yeah, and I think that's terrific because it is so there's so much movement, but it seems like you guys have your hands in two of the most important things, and that's testing all around the clock. So it's not just if you're not feeling well, but taking some preventive measures and putting something in place so that you're making sure that your business continues, or that you yourself are taken care of so you can seek employment. And I think that goes hand in hand with a lot of what we're seeing statewide right now with our 5-star programs that we're trying to do and these checks and balances that we're asking our businesses to provide. Well, this fits right in because this is a system that's already there and available for them. And then when you combine it with the vaccines and your capabilities to support those providers, once we transition through to those different levels to be able to offer it to our public, I just think that's great work that you guys are doing in the long run. And I've included the website. I'll go ahead and post it again for those of you that are hopping onto broadcast a little bit later. COVIDCheckColorado.org is a website that does have information about these amazing programs that we've just referenced. So please be sure that you check that. Courtney has shared that this will continue to go on at least through March. We'll see if there's any extension or any additional details that come out surrounding that in the future. And I'll be sure to tag the COVID Check Colorado social media page as well. So if anyone is interested in engaging with them as well, you can do so in that regard. It looks like we do have another question that's just come through from Tara. Tara, you got it in the nick of time before I started my closing out. So thank you so much for throwing that out there. She's asking, if we had answered this already, if she's curious about the vaccines. Have they been approved for children now? And she knows that it's going to be a while because obviously we have the 1A, we have the 1B that we've all been talking about. But in the foreseeable future, is that something that when it does become available to kids, that it would be approved for them?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. Thank you, Tara, for asking. At this time, there is not a vaccine that is approved for children. For a couple different reasons. One, that hasn't been the priority from a trial perspective. Also, especially when you start getting into younger children, so when we're talking about preschool, elementary, their incidence rate as well as the severity of the illness for most of those kiddos is far less. And so the focus has been on the older population, even considering older 18 plus, if we if we want to consider that, than children. So there's not an approved vaccine for children at this time. I'm sure that we will get there and probably get there very quickly, as evidenced by how quickly we got to the vaccines that we have right now. And also, things are going to change as new vaccines are approved and go through the FDA process as well. So thank you for asking that. Julia, I also want to just mention that anyone at any time is feel free to reach out to me directly. My email address is csteele, so STEELE, at covidcheckcolorado.org. Feel free to reach out to me directly if there are also any questions. I'm a resource here and really want to be able to help out with testing planning, additional information, extra questions, anything, any resource that we can provide.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Courtney. And I've thrown in your email address for folks to see in the comment section if they are interested in connecting with you directly. Believe it or not, we're at our 30-minute mark. And I mentioned to you, like, this will go by so fast because you had so much great information that I knew people would just want to be all over. Thank you so much, Tara. She's just sharing a quick thank you in that regard. It looks like we've answered her question fully. Same for Christine. I did see that she shared a quick, great thank you so much for that as well. We are at our 30-minute mark, which means that we have to close out. If you end up watching this video on replay, give us the hashtag replay so we know that you tuned in. And if you did watch this later and you had a question that we maybe did not get a chance to answer for you, or something that comes to mind, or you start thinking, how do you plan this? How do you incorporate this in your business or in your own personal life? Let us know what that question is. You can always comment it back onto this video. You can DM the page. You can reach out to myself, or you can reach out to Courtney directly as well. We will be back here again for our next live at 11 a.m. tomorrow. So please do come back with us, support our local businesses, as we'll have some great dialogue with one of our newer members in our organization. Courtney, thank you again. I can't thank you enough for 30 minutes that you spent with me this morning. I'm so excited to not only build on our relationship, but help to get the word out so we can really double those 200 to about 400 partners out there for you. So thank you guys for all the work that you're doing. I appreciate that.
Great. Thank you.